Hello, everybody, and welcome to America's favorite youth sports baseball podcast, the Clearing the Bases show, featuring Coach Jimmy, Phil, and Jerry. I'm David Friedman, and I want to thank you for coming along this journey with us today. Hey, Coach, how we doing?
We're doing good, Dave. Doing a lot of traveling lately. Starting to feel a little tired from being all over the Northeast.
Yeah, well, as we record this, we're getting towards the end of July here, and so what do you got? You got a couple weeks left as far as summer ball?
Yeah, actually, this August is a busy August for us. Typically, we're winding down now, maybe a tournament or two left. But we had, because of the COVID last summer, we had some tournaments that were paid for. So we're using those tournaments this August. So this August is going to be a little bit busy for me.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So no rest for the wicked. No rest for the wicked.
No.
Right. So again, we want to just quickly thank everybody for joining along with us. Reach out to us via Twitter at the CTB show on Twitter. You can get us on our email, which is clearingthebases@gmail.com. And thanks for all the feedback. We really appreciate it. Everything's very positive. Our base is growing, and we really, really like that. So we had a different type of show last time where we had Angel Lugo on. I hope everybody enjoyed the conversation where we talked about developing players and the tools that his facility has to help along with that. And we're going to go back to picking out a couple of topics here that we feel very important. So today we want to talk about one of the mental aspects. We do talk about the mental part of the game quite a bit here. So I want to get into one of the specific mental aspects of the game, and that is being a true competitor. And Coach, you want to jump in on that and give a little more detail what we're talking about?
So one of the things that I struggle with a lot, and I'm actually struggling right now trying to talk about it. One of the things I struggle with a lot is with my players is to try and explain to them what it means to compete. There are two schools of thought with that. Some people believe that the ability to compete is inherent, that you're born with it and you can't be taught. And there are other people that believe that it can be taught. I, believe it or not, I used to be in the one group that thought that it was inherent. I don't believe that anymore. I think it's something that can be taught. And I think it's something that's very, very important because I'm seeing more and more of it as I continue to coach. I'm seeing more and more kids that don't quite understand what it means to compete.
Yeah, I get that. And it makes perfect sense to me. We've talked many times about having to be open to new ideas and different ideas and whatnot. So the fact that you were in one camp at one point and then changed over, that's the way life is supposed to work. When things make sense, then you go, okay, I can see from a different point of view. And I agree with you, because if it was just either born, I guess nature nurture type of thing, if it was just born with it or not, then that takes away. It's kind of an excuse as a coach to not focus on it and say, well, hey, there's nothing I can do. The kid doesn't want to compete. Well, no, that's part of our job.
Right. Yeah. And I agree with that completely. That I really, it's funny because I struggle to explain it to players, and there really should be just a definition of what it means to compete. But believe it or not, I've never been able to find that. So I used to put it in terms of the way I used to think when I played, and I hate doing that because I don't like talking about, well, when I played, I did this. The kids don't want to hear that. They don't care what I did, I'm trying to do the math now. 40 some odd years ago.
Yeah.
They don't want to know that. So, so I was searching around trying to find a definition that I could live with. And I found it was an article that was written by Dave Turgeon for USA Baseball. And I thought it was pretty good the way he explained it. He was saying what competing is using your particular skill set to the best of your ability during competition. So again, right there, that kind of like put it in a quick definition that I believe that's what it is. Whatever your skill set is, to use that to the best of your ability during competition That's competing. He also said that it's also the ability to get back up every time you get knocked down, regardless of the outcome, which is something that I do teach my players repeatedly. But I like the idea of having that definition to be able to say, okay, guys, this is what competing is rather than what's in my feeble mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's good. It's very good. I do like anecdotes as far as what happened when I played or when you played or whatnot, because I think when you bring a real world example in on it, so I think it's maybe a two-tiered approach. Maybe is the best of having a book definition. And here's what we really mean, because I do feel like we have to spoon feed a lot of these theories to a lot of the players, because unfortunately that's just what they're used to. It's what they're used to these days in school and whatnot. So I like that as a definition. Absolutely. Sounds a lot like effort and attitude. I don't know.
Yeah,
Something
yeah.
something that you might have heard me say once or twice. So yeah, I mean that's kind of what it boils down to. So let's talk about how do we apply that definition to the real world.
Well, I'm just going to just back up a little bit just to go to one of the problems that I see. It's something that he brought out in the article. I think it's worth mentioning is what he called a convenient competitor. And now this is something that I see more and more and more. And it's something that, needs to be addressed and it needs to be worked on so that it doesn't happen. But what he meant by saying that was, you're a travel team and, you go to a tournament. Now there's going to be a team that's not doing real well. We'll call it the last place team. And there's going to be a team that's at the top of the list. That's a very good team. What he meant by a convenient competitor is that if a player is going to go against that team that's in last place, they're all pumped up. They're ready to go because they feel that confidence that they can beat that team. But yet when they go up against the first place team, now that competitive spirit is gone. They're afraid to compete is what it is. And this is something that I'm seeing more and more is that convenient competitor.
I like that. I like that term. I definitely do. I don't know that I've heard it before, and it's a matter of it's kind of like an old thing that we talk about, like kind of psyching yourself out before you even started. Like you're if you're not in the right frame of mind, you're going to lose before you step on the field. You hear one kid say like, and we'll see it. It could be as simple as we're watching a kid warm up pitching, and the kid's throwing gas, and you hear somebody on the team just be like, "Oh man, he's throwing gas." It's like, okay, what are you doing now? What? Like I don't know how does that help you? Like that's one of the things that I like to throw back at. I'm like, how does it help you by saying that, and especially saying it out loud to the rest of the team? A tells me that you're taking yourself out. That, oh man, he throws too fast for me. And now are you trying to bring other people down with you because and trying to convince them that it's
Right.
too fast? Like that's the type of stuff that definitely drives me crazy. You can have that as a gut reaction, but you need to immediately turn that around and be like, hey, faster comes in, the faster it goes out. Right, guys?
Sure. Sure. But to what you said before, that's an area, that's a particular area where I will talk about when I played in that almost exact scenario that you just explained. So when that happens, I will tell my players, look, that's a challenge, right? If you see that kid, if you're used to seeing guys throw 70, 75, now you go and you see this kid, he's throwing 80, 85. It's a challenge. Go up there. You can beat him. How good is it going to feel if you get in that batter's box and you're able to hit this guy all over the place? Take it as a challenge. Don't look at it like, don't defeat yourself already. You're already
Right.
defeated when you say, oh my God, he's throwing hard. Because when I played, I looked at it like this guy's throwing hard. Oh yeah, we're going to see who's better, me or him. And sometimes he won, sometimes I won. But
Right.
we went out
Right.
there and we competed. We did what the true sense of competition means.
Yeah, and this can manifest itself in other ways as well, right? Where it could not, it might not even be the pitcher that we're talking about, but just as you said, the team in general. Oh my
Sure.
God, we're 0-4 and we're going up against a team that's 4-0, and they've mercied everybody else that they played against. So what? Oh, why are we even bothering going out there? Type of attitude. And hey, man, even if you go out there and you don't win, but you take them to a full game. They've mercied everybody, right? And now you actually take them to a full game where you don't get mercy. That's a victory.
A
You know,
victory.
and it
Sure.
it's all different levels depending on where you're at and what you're doing. If you've got a younger team or whatever, you've got a team that's just really starting to come into their own and just starting to come together, and you happen to run into a buzzsaw of a team. Again, that mental factor of it, and that, geez, so many examples I could think of through the years. But you think of, so not only right from the beginning of the game, but even also after the first or second inning, the other team scores 4 runs in the first inning. Is the game
Right.
over?
Right.
You know, and
Yep.
you can see it in those teams. I think we had talked about it once before. We had one of those situations. I'm a very, very positive person, obviously, effort and attitude. I talk about that all the time. And the team I was coaching did a really good job most of the year of staying in the games, and we were outgunned in quite a few games, and they did a really good job of staying in the games. And then we had a game towards the end of the season where they really just rolled over, top to bottom. You know, best player on our team, the most positive guy on the team. He had had enough. Everybody, and I told the kids after that game, I said, "Man, you guys almost broke me today. Like this is making me very close to not wanting to come back tomorrow." And that's a horrible, horrible feeling to be at. Whereas, I don't care if we get our brains beat in, to use one of your expressions, if you can tell that we're still trying to compete. But when you decide that you're done and we're just going through the motions,
Right.
that's terrible. It's terrible.
Well,
It takes all the excitement, all the fun out of the game.
well, I have a quick story, and this happened just maybe 3-4 weeks ago. So we're playing in a perfect game tournament, and we're in the semifinal round. I think I told you this story. We're playing against a team, and I can't remember the name of the team, but they were ranked number one by perfect game in the Mid Atlantic, and they were ranked like, I think it was 20th in the nation by perfect game. So my boys, obviously, they all saw this prior to the game, and before the game, that's all the talk was. Oh my God, they're ranked this, they're ranked that. So I said, guys, come here. So let's have a little chat. Brought them all together, and I said, do you know what the difference between you guys and that team? What the difference is? And they all looked at me, and they're giving me this reason. They have pitchers, they have this. I said, no.
Right.
I said, there's no difference between you and them. Nothing at all, except for one thing. They think they can beat you, and you think that they can beat you. That's the only difference. All right?
Right.
If you guys thought that you could beat them, then you would be identical. Right? So I said, okay, so let's go play the game. You know what, Dave? It was 1-1 going into, I forgot, after the fourth inning, it was a 1-1 game. They wound up beating us 4-1. I think it was 4-1. They wound up beating us. It was a competitive game. I guarantee you that the other team was like, we better be careful here what we do, because this is a game. So my point is that once I let them know that there's no difference between you and them, believe that you can beat them. They went out, they competed, they played a great game, and there you go.
No, it's so important. And again, just like I could give dozens of examples, you could give dozens, maybe 100 examples of that type of thing happening, where I was as proud of our team this year on some of our losses as I was on a couple of our wins, because of how we competed during the game. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely some circumstances where you can be just as proud, if not prouder, of your team on a loss as you can on a win, depending on how they competed during the game, and the level of competition that they were playing against. I
Sure.
think that can happen many, many times during a season.
I would say that,
So
it happens with me. It happens with, because of the skill level of the team that I coach. That happens a lot, where they go out, they don't necessarily win the game, but I'm prouder. They're doing everything that they're supposed to do. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. That's it.
yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. And on the same thing, I can think of a situation This is 5, 6 years ago, one of the travel teams that I was coaching where we won a game. And I had very little positive to say to the team afterwards because it was a situation where like we jumped out to like a 10-0 lead, I think, in the first inning or something like that. And we wound up winning like 10-9 or something like that. And it was
Right.
you could tell, that the kids like, and I think it was a situation where the other team, like a couple kids came in the second inning and all of a sudden they were in, and then it was all of a sudden this kid's throwing a little harder, and then our fielders were, I think, were kind of joking around because we had this big lead and all this stuff, and then they just came back, and I'm just like, I remember after the game just being like, you guys got me a little perplexed there because we won. So how much can I, how much can I talk about the bad parts? But it really was most of the bad parts. I think we had one or two hits after the first inning, like something like that, and all that. So it definitely puts us in an interesting position as coaches, where again sometimes that loss was a much better feeling than a win. I'm sure you've been in that type of situation yourself.
I could tell you it just happened again, just 2 days ago, whatever. We were playing a team that we were much better than. We wound up winning the game, but after the game, I sat the boys down and I said, I usually lead that post game talk with, how do you guys feel? And it's uncanny how they know. And they said, you know what, coach, we were lucky to get away with a win there. And I said, that's right, guys. I said, you were very lucky. I said, because you played a team that was not even in the same league as you guys, but you played down to their level. We went through the whole thing. But I wasn't as happy with that as I was the game that we lost against, that team in that perfect game tournament.
Right.
I was so proud of them, the way they competed and the way they played. And, it happens that way. One of the things that I wanted to touch on real quick with this, as far as competing and the getting back to what we were just saying about the convenient competitors, where do I believe that comes from? A lot of times, and parents don't get mad at me for this, but I believe a lot of that comes from the parents, because if little Johnny goes out and he has a great game, mommy and daddy are all excited, they're all happy for you, and you played great today. If little Johnny goes out and he has a bad game, they go home, well, you did this wrong, we got to work on your hitting, this and that, and whatever. Everything is negative. There's no positive there. So now, is all the kid wants to do is he wants to succeed because it makes my parents happy. So I want that convenient, I'm sorry, not convenient, but I want that easy mark, so to speak. I want to be able to go out and I want to be able to beat this team so that I get that praise. If I go out and I play against a team that's very good and I don't perform well, I'm going to get beat up on my way home. And I think that contributes to it. Now, I'm not saying that all parents do that, but I know it's prevalent.
Yeah, it's funny because I think we could, I don't know how funny it is, but I think we could look at it, maybe ironic, that we could also look at it from the other aspect of us being in the participation trophy era.
Sure.
Also, I think
sure.
feed into this type of thing where it doesn't matter how much effort you put out because you're going to get the same trophy as the other kid. So, or the other team, even if they are, they're all in and your team is running around, whatever, not paying attention and not putting the effort out. And then you get into the levels like where we're coaching, and all of a sudden it's smacking them in the face that this is a different world.
Right.
And, having that as the participation trophy, I think used to be like for your T-ball and your, what we called instructional league or coach pitch league. And then it started creeping up into actual, when we're actually playing where we should be playing live games, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And all of a sudden it's like, well, let's just not keep score or whatnot. And again, we've talked many, many times about it's not all about winning and losing, but there does have to be, there should be some consequence for your efforts and who's really practicing hard and who's trying hard.
I was just gonna. You got me laughing there where you said there should be some consequences for your efforts, and I was just gonna say, well, believe me, on my team there's consequences for that.
Right. But I'll bet you it might be the first time in some of these
Yeah,
kids.
it
And
probably is.
you're talking about whether you're talking about your JV team or your travel team, you're talking about teenagers, and it might be the first time that they've run into it. So, that's just it's kind of where I don't want to get into a whole other
Yeah.
conversation, but it's kind of where society has gone. But I do agree it could be both aspects of it where the parents need to show support either way, should be showing support either way. Can't be afraid to say, hey, what happened on that play? It looked like you were jogging after the ball. They shouldn't be screaming at him about it, but shouldn't just be like, hey, that's okay. No, that's okay. It's all right. You get him next time. It can't all be about that either.
Right. I have another quick story, again, just happened the other day. It's fresh in my mind. So, and it really pertains to what we were just saying. So 2 outs, my runner is on second base. Batter hits a weak ground ball to second base. The runner on second base does what he's supposed to do. On contact, he took off. He rounded third base and started jogging like it was a routine out to second base, and he started jogging. Well, the second baseman bobbled the ball. The kid that hit the ball was very fast, and they didn't get him at first base. He saw that. He turned on the speed. He went, and he did score. It was a close play at the plate. He did score, but I came back to the dugout, and I said to him, go sit down. So he did, and I said, you know why? He said, yeah, coach, I know why. Okay, so here's a kid that prior to playing for me, this would have been a pouting session. This would have been banging his helmet, doing this, doing that. You know what? For the rest of the game, he was on the bench. He was cheering his team on. He was doing everything the right way. And after the game, after I spoke to the team, I pulled him on the side and I said, I got to tell you something. I said, I've coached hundreds, if not thousands, into the thousands of players. I said, and I've been proud of a lot of my players. I said, but I was so proud of you today, right up there with the proudest I've ever been of a player, because of the way you handled it. You knew what you did wrong. You took it like a man and you moved on. And it goes back to what you were saying before, but this is the first time they're really being exposed to that type of coaching. And it was a proud moment for me, because I said to myself, it's where I'm getting to this kid. He understands now.
Yeah, that's awesome, because that's, again, our job as coaches is not just about the X's and O's and how to position your feet as you're throwing. It's I think the mental part of the game is what's primarily lacking, and that's fantastic. That's a victory for you. All right. So again, I think we could go power back and forth all day long with examples of where it was, we saw good competitiveness and a lack of competitiveness through the years. There's a ton of examples out there. So let's talk about what we can do as coaches to help that along. Because I think we're both in agreement that it's not just something that you're born with. There certainly are people, just like everything else, there are people that are born with more of it. Maybe they have a higher revving engine than others, certainly. But I do think it's something that we can help to massage and move along and help it grow as part of their personality, not just in baseball, but in life. So how do we, as coaches, how do we get that through to our team? So one of the things that I like to bring up, it's a quote from a movie. It's not a well-regarded movie. For some reason, it just appealed to me, and I've seen it a bunch of times. So it's a football movie. It's called The Replacements, with Gene Hackman and Keanu Reeves. And so basically, without getting into the minutia of the game, I do like it. I think that there's multiple quotes that we could take from it. But one of the things that the coach says to his quarterback, it was supposed to be a passing play, and he checked off and made it a running play. And the coach basically just was furious with him and just turned around and said, when the game is on the line, winners always want the ball. And it's a line, it's a throwaway line from a throwaway movie, but it's something that has stuck with me. It's probably 20 years old at this point. That has just stuck with me through the years, and it's something that I have told every team that I've ever been on. And what does that mean? That means that when the game is on the line, you want to be the one that's pitching, or you want to be the one that's getting up the plate, or you want to be the one who the ball's getting hit to. When we're in there, we're up by 1 run and there's 2 runners on. Do you want that ball coming to you or not? And that is all a mentality. And that mentality absolutely is going to, no pun intended, field through to what happens actually in the game. Because if you're sitting there going, don't hit the ball to me, don't hit the ball, don't hit the ball to me, and the ball gets hit to you, your chances of fielding that cleanly and making the play went down significantly.
Yeah. So we played against a team a while ago that the players, almost every single pitch, you would hear the players say out loud, I want this one. I want this one. You would actually hear them. Now, I don't particularly like it in a game setting, but I started training my players to do that in practices, because what we talk about all the time is, every pitch is a game. Every pitch is a game within the game. So we talk about, what am I doing if the ball's hit on the ground? What am I doing if it's hit to my left? What am I doing if it's hit to my right? You have to go through these scenarios in your head, and then this way, through that visualization, you did it in your head once. Now, once you do it again, it's the second time. Once the ball is hit to you, now you're doing it for a second time. So we talk about that a lot, but it was something that I thought was pretty interesting that they were doing during the game that I want to incorporate into my practices. The other thing that we need to do as coaches, and this is something that I've struggled with this for years, and I'm beginning to introduce more and more of it to my practices, where we have competitions in practice. Everything is a competition that we do. Case in point would be we'll be in the cages hitting. Well, if you're in there hitting and you hit the top of the cage, you're out. Next guy comes in. I want everything hitting the back of the cage. So we'll compete that way. Then what we do is in the back of our cages, and I know that this is difficult, but in the back of our cages we have banners that are a certain height, and I'll take 3 of the cages. I'll put so many guys in each cage, and I say, okay, cage 1, 2, and 3, you're competing against each other. If you hit the sign, that's a point. If you hit the top of the cage, that's minus a point. So it's a competition, and they go through, and the boys have a lot of fun, but it promotes that competition. There's many ways that we do it now. And I think that that's something that everybody should be doing to promote that competition. The players love it, and they learn, it becomes second nature, and now they're competing all the time.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And then now the trick becomes, how do you get that to transfer over onto the field? Because that's where there's one thing to be. We've all had players that were great in the gym, and it didn't transfer over onto the field, both physically and mentally. So I think that's the other challenge, is bringing that over. So some of that just reminding them, hey guys, this is just like when we were practicing in the cage the other day.
Okay. One of the other things, and I don't know if I'm getting off topic here, but in terms of competing in the cage, what you're talking about, that yes, you have cage hitters. So I was always dead set against, and this is going back years ago, dead set against players hitting off a pitching machine, because I felt that you couldn't time it. It was just not something that you're going to see. In reality, I would rather guys hit off of live arms. Well, I don't know if I listened to a podcast or I read an article. It was, and I can't remember who it was, but I do remember that she was a college softball coach. And she talked about her players hitting off a machine. And she had a very, very good point. She said she wants it. The cage, if you're getting in the cage and you're throwing BP to your players and they're hitting every single one and they're ripping it right back up the middle, that's not reality. That is not what happens in a game. So what we do when we get in the cage, now I use the hack attack all the time, because it's harder to time. It's easier to time the pitcher when you can see his arm. So I make it harder for them in there. And it works. Make it as hard as it possibly can. I also make them go through their in between, because again, in the past, I've done it. I've been guilty of it. And I've seen coaches do this, where when they throw BP, it's pitch after pitch after pitch after pitch. Well, that's not reality. So what I do with my players is I throw a pitch, I have them step out of the batter's box, then I have them put one foot in, they focus on the barrel of their bat, deep breath in, deep breath out, then they get another pitch, because that's more realistic. And this is teaching them how to compete.
Right. Right. And you're right. You're really trying instead of it's almost it's just a quantity over quality situation. When it comes to I think that one of the big ways that kids have an issue with that is soft toss, where they're they're throwing to each other and they're not paying attention. The kid that's throwing is just throwing. The kid that's swinging is not getting set up every pitch. He's basically like his bat is barely coming back, and that next ball is coming forward, and you're reinforcing sloppy habits. But
So
yeah, but
no, I was just gonna say what's interesting is you'll see, and this again gives you the makeup of your players because this is what I want them to do. This is what they're supposed to do. But you will see players that do it, that take that step out, take that little, whatever it is between pitches, 5, 10 second break, and then get back in for the next one. But you'll also see the guys that you have to remind them every time, stop, get out, and I have to say it over and over again. So, I'm trying to teach them how to compete, but some of them aren't buying it. What do you do?
right,
You have to do your best, hope they get it, and move on.
yeah, keep reinforcing, and you hope that maybe they'll start to do. It gets a little bit tricky when you want the leaders on the team to step up and maybe start reminding the other kids and making sure that they do it in the right way and not in a, not getting sarcastic and not in a demeaning way. But yeah, I mean it's like everything else that we talk about in sports. A lot of it is just repetition, and hopefully they eventually get it. And if they're not going to get it, ultimately, then maybe that is the time when you pull them aside and say, "Hey, there's a reason why I'm telling you to do it this way. And if you
Right.
don't want to do it this way, then don't be surprised if you're not on the field for the next game."
Right. And
You know,
the funny thing about it is that they don't, how do I put this? They don't recognize that by watching their teammates, because believe me, the kids that do it are my best hitters.
sure.
So the other kids should be watching to say, hey, wait a minute, little Johnny is hitting real well. I see he's on base all the time. He's getting hits. Maybe I should do what he's doing because that's what coach is asking us to do. And maybe I'll be a better hitter too. But they don't. There's nothing you can do about it. Like you said, you could just present it, reinforce it, keep hammering it home, and those who get it, and those who don't.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, absolutely.
the other thing that we should talk about a little bit with competing is, how do we get them better at competing? How do we do it? Well, one coach that I listened to again, or I read or I listened to also had said that, and he was talking about himself. He said the only time that he was nervous was when he was unprepared. And this really hit home with me. Not only for myself, because I feel that way also. I felt that I've gone to practice without a practice plan, and I feel like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And it's my fault. Obviously, I should have a plan, but I felt nervous, like I'm going to have a bad practice because I didn't prepare. But with players, it's the same thing. But it's our job to do it. We have to prepare them. If we prepare them and we practice with them and we give them repetition, they're going to be better able to compete because they're prepared.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, it's the repetition and following a game plan. And if you're not buying in as a player, again, if you're not buying into the game plan, then don't be surprised when you're not part of it. And
Right.
that's really what it boils down to. The other thing I like to tell the kids, and I sorry, I forgot where I got it from. It's not something that I created, but I definitely have incorporated it many, many times. Is basically, the beginning of the season, we talk about tryouts, whether that be February, March, whatever, and then we get in the season, and I'm like, all right, great, now you made the team, but every day is a tryout. Every moment that we are together, if it's an hour and a half, if it's 2 hours, every moment is a tryout. Is as me as a coach, in my mind, every moment is a tryout. So you as a player, every moment should be looked at as a tryout. You hit a ball and you don't run it out in practice, guess what? that tells me you're not going to run it out during the game, and I don't want to see that. Okay, that's not being a hard competitor. I want to see that the guy that pops up and it goes behind him, and the catcher has a play. You better bust your tail down the first base, because what if that ball drifts back into fair territory and it bounces off the catcher's glove? You know, those types of things every day, every moment. Every pitch. I had something like real a little more clever, but it was basically like every day, every practice, every pitch is another opportunity to improve your standing on the team or knock your standing on the team down a little bit. It's up to you which direction that you want that to go in. Doesn't mean I expect to do everything perfectly, but we're going to see what type of effort you're putting forward.
Yeah, I think so. Basically what it all comes down to is that being a competitor is not necessarily inherent. It's something that can be taught. I think that we have to create competition in practice, let the boys compete, and not just make consequences for it. So in other words, we'll do a simple around the horn, throwing, where we'll throw from home to third to second to first around the horn that way. And we do it with one ball, and then we introduce two balls, then we introduce three balls. Well, if somebody drops a ball, or somebody makes a throw that doesn't hit the guy in the chest, then it's 10 push-ups. Boom, do 10 push-ups. Right. Okay, guys, get up. Let's do it again. Make those consequences so that they're learning how to compete.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's something we talked about right from the get-go, that actions have to have consequences, and that's it, both positive and negative. If you're setting up one team, whether it be a throwing drill, a hitting drill, like you were talking about before, so the team that comes at first doesn't do anything. It doesn't have to do anything. The team that comes in second has to do 20 push-ups. The team that comes in third has to do 30 push-ups. Whatever it is. So you can look for those little rewards, or you can look for the full reward, that type of thing. Or the team that wins doesn't have to help break the cage back down after practice is over, or whatever.
Sure.
So that's a big part of what we do. Obviously, again, is that mental aspect of the game, being ready to play at all times, being ready to play hard and compete at all times. I love that comment that you made before, and I know you took it from somebody else, but that the whole thing about being a convenient competitor. If you're going to be a convenient competitor when it suits you, as a coach, how am I going to know when that is?
Right. Well, I can tell you that with my players, I found out. I found out when that is. But also think about it this way as a coach. How can you plan for a game if you don't know, if you're getting Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Hyde that day? Yeah. How can you plan? Well, I'm going to have little Johnny pitch tomorrow. And then you get to the field and little Johnny says, oh, you know what, coach, because I don't know if I feel right. I can't. What am I going to do now? I've already got my whole lineup set. I've got I know who's coming in. I know everything. Now I got to change everything right before the game because I can't count on him. I can't put him on the mound now. There's no way because he's already checked out.
Right. We're not showing up to the ball field and then sitting there going, okay, hey, you play second base. Hey, you play left field. No, we have these things planned out. And I mean, yes, there's some flexibility, and you never know if your pitcher's going to go 1 inning or 6 innings or whatever. But at least to start, you have to have it. We have a framework, a basic framework set up in a plan, plan A and a plan B. And if your plan A gets thrown off before the first pitch is thrown, I mean, that really has that can set the tone for just a terrible day. So,
and one last thing, because I know that we got to wrap this up, I think. One last thing too is we have to. And I don't do a very good job of this. That I'm going to make sure that I pay much more attention to is to make them understand. It's not me that you're letting down. I'm the coach. I'm not the one going out on the field. You're letting down the rest of the guys on your team. You're just saying, you know what, guys, I'm not comfortable in this situation. I don't know if I can handle this. So you know what? I don't care whether you guys win or lose, but I'm not going on that mound, or I'm not getting up to bat. Sorry, guys. Well, we have to make sure that the players understand that you're letting down your team.
Absolutely. I'm the one that's going to be disappointed,
Right.
but but it's really affecting these other guys. And then, and you look at, take it to the next level, like, well, coach, I don't really feel like getting up, I don't want to hit against this pitcher, or I don't feel like pitching today or catching today, whatever the situation is. But I'll go play second base. Yeah. That ain't gonna cut it. There's just,
No,
you're telling me you're not ready to play. That's what you're saying. And like I said, it's a damn, as a coach, it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't, because if it is one of your better players, you don't put them out there, obviously lowers the chances of you winning. It takes away from the team chemistry and all that stuff. But if you could put a kid out there who's already defeated and already saying, we don't have a shot, then you're doing the same thing anyway. So in that case, I would always defer to leaving him off the field and giving somebody else an opportunity to step up, and make it stake a claim. And if that kid does stake his claim and does perform up to, exceeds expectations or whatnot, well, hey, maybe you just bought yourself a seat on the bench for a time being, or at least, a platoon type of player instead of a starter. So that's, like I said, every day, every moment, every pitch, everything's a tryout when you're talking about, when we're dealing with sports, especially at the levels that we're talking about, when you're talking about your travel teams and your high school teams. Little league obviously a little bit different, but yeah, there has to be rewards and consequences, and as long as they understand that the biggest consequence is to the team, and then secondarily to themselves, and then in third place is us as the coach.
sure.
I mean, that's, like I said, we might be the most disappointed, but we're not the one that's most affected by it.
Right. So, and I'm with you 100%. On my travel team, I have less flexibility than I do on my high school team, because my high school team, I have more players. So like you said, if I feel that a kid checked out on me like that, and on my high school team, he's going on the bench. I'm not even thinking about, I don't give a damn. I'd rather lose the game. You're
Right.
going to go sit on that bench. You're going to think about what you just did to your team. On my travel team, it's a little different because it depends on, pitch counts, and I don't have that many players to be able to say, okay, I'm going to sit this guy. I may have to play him. There's reasons, different reasons, but I'm with you. If I could, yes, you check out on me like that, you're going to sit on the bench and you're going to think about it, and we'll talk about it later.
Right. Yeah, has to be, because if we don't have that side of it and we don't reinforce it, then we're part of the problem. Right? Because you not saying no is a yes. Like that type of thing. So if we're not discouraging the behavior, then we're encouraging it. Like I'm a big believer in that. We can't be neutral in those situations. So yeah, I'm a big believer in that. But all right. So again, very important conversation I think that we just had about mental aspect in sports. One of the biggest parts of it with any sport, and especially in baseball, is really being a true competitor. Again, borrowing the line that you used, Jimmy, being a true competitor, not a convenient competitor. I think that's fantastic. Came up with a couple of good tactics to use here in terms of how do we get our teams in shape and doing it. And hopefully you guys can get something out of this. So we're going to wrap it up again for this week. We want to thank everybody for listening and downloading. It's been very positive. The show's been growing and getting more popular, and that's great. We want to thank everybody for reaching out to us. You can reach out to us on Twitter. That's at the CTB Show, on Twitter, and clearing the bases at Gmail. Go ahead, shoot us an email, drop us a line on the Twitter, and we'll respond to you, and we'll follow you back if you give us a follow. We love hearing from you guys and coming up with other topics, either commenting on what we talked about today or new topics for future episodes. And I'll wrap up as I always do. Always remember, there's only two things in life that we have full control over. That's our effort and our attitude. PMA, positive mental attitude, 100% effort, good things will follow. Final thoughts, Coach?
A couple of things I want to say before we sign off here is, we talked about, how we're getting youth players to compete. And the mental side of the game is something that I'm very passionate about. And I think we'll get into that a lot more. One of the other things, too, that I want to tell people out there is we had our first guest the last episode. And I think maybe this is a good spot to tell people, listen, we're looking for guests. So if you're a high school baseball coach, you're a youth trainer, you're a youth baseball coach, and you think you have something to offer, reach out to us. Like Dave said, with the email address, and on Twitter, you can IM us. We're looking for people to bring on, quality people to, continue these conversations. So thank you everyone for listening. And just remember, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next one.